Hi everyone. Anna had a few requests for me to do my hip strengthening again. So I'm going to do the same structure as before, but I'm also going to add something new. So everyone take a drink of water, and throughout my stretching and everything, if anyone needs a drink, just take it on your own and don't feel like, I'll also give you breaks, but if you feel like you need one, you can take one. Okay, so we're going to start with the same one as last time on our backs, with one leg in the air. So I usually start with my right, and I'm going to pulse it back and forth. So I have my leg flexed, my foot flexed, and my knee really straight. So I'm going to go 10 times. Good. And then after you go back and forth 10 times, you're going to go side to side and try to push your hips into the floor and not lift them or turn them. Good. After you do that, you're going to do 10 circles in whatever direction. Good. And then once you do those, you're going to reverse to the other way. Good. And then once you do those, you're going to do little kicks back and forth. Try not to go too far. I know for me, in order to keep my hips square, I usually just go straight up and then as far down as I can. So you don't want to force anything. Good. Now, so I just did my right leg, so I'm going to turn to my left, and my right leg is going to be on top. Good. And so you're going to do 10 clamshells. I sometimes put my hand on my hip to make sure that I'm not opening it, but you don't have to. You can choose whatever. And really think about squeezing your seat when you're doing these. Good. Now, you're going to lift your toe. So for me, it's my right toe, and I'm going to lift it off the ground, parallel to my other leg, and I'm going to bring my toes together and lift again. And do that 10 times, and really squeeze your seat. Good. Then you're going to do 10 of what I call the dancing legs. So you're going to bring your knee all the way down, and then you're going to lift. And so my toe is following, my knee is leading. And my hip is still square even though I'm doing this. So it's really taking control. You can go as fast or slow as you want, but try to really keep your hips square. Good. And after you do 10 of those, you're going to just do 10 straight lifts to the side without opening up your hip. So it's turned in. And really straighten that leg. Good. And once you do those, you can shake out your hip a little bit. Awesome. And then you're going to turn to the other side. So for me, I had my my right leg the last time, so everything I do on this side is going to be my left. So I start with my leg flexed, and I'm going to pulse back and forth 10 times. Good. And then you go side to side. This one's also really good for your abdominals. to try to keep your hips square. And then you're gonna go circles. And then reverse for 10, 9. Good, and after you do 10 of those, you're gonna do 10 kicks. And really try to keep your hips square here. I know that if I at all loosen my hips, my hip will start to clunk. So I try to keep my hips exactly square. And I usually put my hand on my hip so I can feel it. Good. Now we're gonna go into our clamshells again when you're all ready. So you can either have your hand on your hip or you can put it down in front of you to stabilize yourself. I put mine on my hip. And we're gonna do 10 clamshells. And once you do those, you're gonna lift your top leg, your toe, so it's parallel with your bottom leg, and you're gonna bring your toes together and lift up 10 times. Good, and now we're gonna do our dancing leg. So if your hand's on your waist, you wanna try to see if your elbow stays exactly in the same place the whole time. So your hip isn't moving at all. Good, and then after those, you're gonna do your 10 lifts with straight knees. Good, and then shake it out. So the next one we're gonna do is I'm gonna lift my right leg, and let's see, how do I explain this one? It's the thread the needle. So my right leg's gonna come over my left, and for me, you can either grab your thigh, or you can grab like I usually grab my shin, and then so that way I'm pulling my hips in a little bit tight. So I find this stretch I feel in my seat. So you want to try to pull this and hold it for 10 seconds. Good, and then you can switch sides. So your left leg's gonna cross over your right, and you're gonna lift your knee off the ground. You can either grab your thigh or you can grab your shin. Good, so the next one, we're gonna plant our feet into the ground and with our hands by our sides, and we're gonna try to come up into a little bridge here and really try to square off your hips, and you're gonna lower. And then, so you're gonna do that 10 times on your own. So really think about holding your seat muscles when you're up here, and then slowly controlling down. I usually do this one with a resistance band in between my knees. I find that it helps a lot more too. Okay, so once you're done those, you're gonna lift back into your bridge, and you're gonna try to lift one leg. So for me, I'm gonna lift my right leg and try to make sure my hips don't move. It's really hard, but you're gonna try to push into the left side and lift your right leg without dropping that right hip, and then you replace it. So each leg, try to hold for 5 seconds and then switch. So you really have to plant that bottom leg into the floor and lift the opposite hip up. Good, and you're gonna do 2 more. So for me, my bum is lifted off the ground. And last one. Good. And just hug your knees into your chest and roll it out a little bit. Awesome. Okay. The next one we're gonna do is a plank. I'm gonna do mine on my forearms, but you can also just do it straight on your hands. And the goal of this one is to try to have a little bend in your knees. So when I was in physio, I'd do a lot of planks, and my physiotherapist would be really picky about making sure my hips weren't too high or weren't too low. You really want to try to keep them square. So I found that whatever my sore hip always used to tip into the ground a little bit more. So if you notice that you have one hip that's a little bit sore compared to the other, really try to keep it pulled up and that it's not sinking. So you can choose between your elbows down here or your hands, but whatever way you choose. So I'm going to come out and I'm going to bend my knees a little bit, and I'm really going to think about my hips being square. So as I start to get tired, I feel my right hip drop down a little bit, so I'm going to pull it up a little bit more. Awesome. Good job, everyone. Okay, the next one we're going to do is we're going to start to stretch our splits a little bit. So we just kind of got our hips square and engaged. So now we're going to try to stretch them a little bit for our splits. So you can start with whatever leg. For me, it's going to be my right. And I'm going to start with just bringing my hips forward a little bit, and still my hips are square. So if I loosen my hips, I find I can get a lot farther, but I'm going to square them off. And I have my hand above my knee, but you can put your hands wherever you want. So for me, I'm really thinking about my back leg. So my left hip is really coming down towards the floor, and I feel it in my hip flexor. Good, now I'm gonna bring my hands to the ground, and I'm gonna shoot my bum back and stretch my front leg. So you can either flex if you have looser hamstrings, or you can point. So I'm gonna try to flex today, but I'm really gonna push my heel. So everyone push your heel into the ground as hard as you can. And still really try to pull. So for me, I'm pulling my right leg, my front leg back a little bit, so that my hips square off. Good, now I'm gonna try to turn my toes to the right and to the left, kind of like a windshield wiper. Awesome. And now you're gonna go into your split. So no matter how far you go, I want you to try to keep your hips square. So I know for me, if I square off my hips, I can go a little bit less far, but my hips will thank me later. And I usually try to walk my hands back, because then I can make sure I feel my center, and then I can go a little bit farther. Good, and we're gonna hold for 15 more seconds. And if you can lift your hands or press your knees into the ground as far as you can for the next 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Good job. Awesome, and shake out your hips a little bit. Good, and let's try it on the other side. So I'm up on my knees, and I'm gonna bring for me, it's my left leg forward, but it could be opposite for you. And I'm gonna push forward into my lunge. So I'm really thinking about my back leg, my hip, that hip is feeling a big stretch here because I'm really trying to push that hip forward while I go forward as well. So your hands can be up on your knee or you can bring them down. I find when my hands are on my knee, I can really think about that hip more and I feel a bigger stretch here. Good, and hands to the ground. You're gonna shoot your bum back and stretch that front knee. So for me, I already know that I just lost my hip a little bit, so I need to pull back my front leg. I'm gonna push that leg into the ground with a flexed or pointed toe. And push as hard as you can for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good, and now you're gonna do windshield wiper, so to the right and to the left, moving that foot. Awesome. And now you're gonna go into your split. So try to stay really controlled and watch where your hips are going. And then if you can get far enough that you can bring your hands to your sides, I usually try to do that. I'm really thinking about keeping my hips as square as I can. Good. And you can take off your hands if you can, or push your leg into the ground as much as you can for the next 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Awesome. Good, so shake out your hips and we're gonna do our center split. So you're gonna open into your straddle and don't force it too far. So for me, it's a comfortable straddle, but it's not like my max. So first I'm just gonna stretch over to one side. If you feel pretty flexy here, you can try to, I'm going to my left, so towards my left foot, I can try to catch my left foot with my right hand and bring my shoulder down a little bit and I'll feel a stretch here. But if you just feel a stretch just leaning, that's great too. So with this one, you really want to try to make sure that the opposite hip, then the one that you're stretching is going to be down towards the ground. So it's pushing your seat bones down. So for me, I can feel my right hip is lifting a little bit. So I'm going to focus on pushing that right hip into the ground. Good, and other side. So I'm now going to my right. I'm going to stretch and try to keep my left hip into the floor. So for me here, I'm going to try to grab my foot and I can try to bring my shoulder down, but still focus on keeping your hip into the floor. Awesome. Now you're going to reach forward and try to go as far as you can without rounding your back. So if you could just be here, I'm really thinking about my tailbone pointing towards my back wall. So as long as I'm really thinking about turning my tailbone and less rounding my back, and I'm going to go as far as I can. And we can focus on what Sarah was saying about long necks here too. Good. So now you can close off your straddle a little bit more, and I'm gonna separate both hands and put one hand on either side of my leg. So I'm doing my right leg, but you can choose whatever. And I'm gonna lift that leg off the floor 5 times, okay? So you can do it at your own pace. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good. Then we're gonna switch sides. And we lift that leg for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. Now I'm gonna push forward a little bit into a more challenging split. And I'm just gonna try to go a little bit more forward here and see if you can get any further. So this is, for me, my max split. So you can push as far as you want here. If you have a flat split, I don't, but you could roll onto your belly. But for me, I'm just gonna stretch normally. Good, and the last one we're gonna do is Olivia's favorite, is our pike stretch. So we're gonna sit up nice and tall, and we're gonna point our toes. If you're feeling pretty warm, you can try to flex your toes, but I'm not gonna make you do that. So you're gonna reach up nice and high, and you're gonna try to reach as far as you can over to your toes. And then if you can grab them, that's great. If not, you can grab the back of your calf, or you can just reach. But really try to stretch your knees. That's the most important part about this. Good, and we're gonna hold for 15 seconds. So really try to challenge yourself. And then for the last few seconds, you can try to flex, but we're gonna keep holding for a second. Good, I'm gonna try to flex my toes for the last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good, shake it out. Good job, everyone.